Kusuzampo and welcome to all our viewers. This is BBS Channel 2. I am Ngodup, your host for the next 1 hour, and this is the Jangchubshing, your weekly dose of Buddhism. For those of you who are watching our show for the first time, what we do on this show is we discuss Buddhist truths in an attempt to better comprehend the vast and timeless Buddha Dharma. We have the discussion with lamas, rinpoches, practitioners, experts and scholars. And today the topic in discussion is a follow-up of what we had 2 weeks ago. This is a discourse on the ongoing Kangjur oral transmission being transmitted by His Holiness the 78th Jekhenpo Tukujimi Chodala. And our guest for this show is Lama Ngodup Dorji. Welcome to our show again, Lama.
Thank you.
Lama, I will have to request Lama for an opening remark again, should Lama have anything to share with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me again. Although I don't have much to share, it's a privilege for me to be just talking about a very important event that's taking place up in Kunsal Phorang, as you just said. And for those who are knowledgeable, informed, I don't think there's a reason for me to be just talking about, but nonetheless, there are a lot of young minds who probably might be very inquisitive as to what it means or what's happening and all those things. For those young minds, maybe just sharing my views probably might go a long way, and if not anything, it might be interesting.
Yes, I'm sure it is. And I also forgot to mention to the viewers that this is a live call-in show. Lama, in the previous show we spoke about the Kangjur. We had an overview of what the Kangjur is about. And there Lama shared with us that the Kangjur is classified into 3, popularly known in its Sanskrit as the Tripitaka, and the 3 being the Vinaya, the Sutra, and the Abhidharma. And now if Lama could share with us, which I forgot to ask Lama last time, what the Vinaya, the word itself means. Lama did share with us that in Cheke it's Dilwa. So if Lama can share what Vinaya, the Sutra, and what Abhidharma, the term itself, what it means.
Well, Dulwa Dodeng Ngamba, that's what it is. When we say Vinaya, we talk about discipline. And as I said, there are 13 volumes of Vinayas. And I think it's been placed in the first category as, I think more than anything else, sometimes it's easy to tame ourselves physically and then gradually work within. So that's why we have Vinaya, where it talks, it has sets of rules, especially for the ardent Sangha, as to how they might proceed on the path. And that's something that actually working around to give somebody, especially an ardent monk or a nun, to be a practitioner and not waste their time. It goes into a detail, actually. See, if you just think of, it's almost like parenting. Buddha was parenting us at the matter. Because if you just look into seeing how you should be living a life of a monk, for that matter, he talks about, you have to build this size, which is maybe like a 6-footer or something, and then you have to plaster your flooring so that the bugs don't get into you, and then you have to have a stick so that you don't have to wake up and push, open your doors and all those things. So all in all, it's just sort of guiding your little child to be a good human being. In this case, to be an enlightened being, I guess.
Yes. So that's what the Vinaya is about, and the Sutra.
And also the Vinaya, actually, I think we just touched that before. It's about a story. The rules were not just said by somebody saying like, hey, there's this rule that somebody has to follow.
Yes.
Maybe I made something, let's say a mistake, which probably would distract me from being on the path. And for that, then the Buddha just came up with a rule saying that, hey, how about just doing this, just putting yourself on this track. And as I said, again, Vinaya is discipline, but it's a discipline to, sort of better yourself. It's not a discipline that, you can't just sort of create havoc or harm yourself. So that's what Vinaya talks about, and as I said, it's more like physical. And when you tame yourself physically, I think you can look better within yourself. And the sutra talks mostly about, it's like, the sutra here is most like the bridge between Vinaya and a tantra, sort of. Not really, but when you say do, the term do, even in Dzongkha we say, no?
Nice.
Literally meaning it's like a traffic, a roundabout, where the routes connect. And what His Holiness is giving up there right now is the do. And it has about 30 volumes from print that he is reading right now, of which majority are like shared by both the sects Hinayana and Mahayana. And then there are about 6 volumes which just talks about Hinayana. And then of course there are this three other chapter volumes which talks exclusively about Mahayana. So, and here I think the topic touch mostly is that you're touching on compassion and generosity, for that matter. And maybe at some point I can tell you a small story as to how, how it touches these 2 topics. And then to be aware, what we need to be aware actually is that we're not abandoning the Hinayana as we go on to Mahayana or to Vajrayana or Tantra. In fact, it's like a stepping stone that you go ahead from one to another and upgrade yourself. It's like your experience as you stay in the studio. I'm sure that you have gained a lot of experience from the years that you've worked here. Yes. Likewise, you work up on the path, and eventually, through your experience, try to gain enlightenment.
Yes. And then Lama, the Abhidharma?
It's more about wisdom.
Yes.
So there's more like doctrinal, kind of things that we teach in there, yes, or talk about. In fact, all the teachings here, the 3 classes of teachings that we're having, or the 3 baskets,
yes,
just brings you all the way. It covers all the topics. Let it be when you say Tegwa Memba, the middle path, or the Vajrayana, or Mantrayana or Tantrayana, whatever you want to call it. But
yes,
that's where you deal mostly with your emotions. It's not. Like when you come to the world of Mahayana, it's not that much as to abandoning something to be able to move forward, or rather, it's like taking something as a companion.
Yes.
And when it comes to the Vajrayana section, not only do you take that along as a companion, you rather transform that as something that's pure and pristine.
Yes, yes.
So your views get more polished as you walk up the way.
Yes, yes, yes. And previously, when we did the first show, before we got speaking about the Kangjur in detail, because the first episode we decided in consultation with Lama that we would speak about the Vinaya. But before we did that, we spoke about this metaphor that Lama was able to share with us, which I hope the audience as well as the devotees who are going to Kinsal Padrang or even receiving other teachings will be able to benefit. Lama shared with us that example of taking the example of a pot, the 3 faults of how not to receive the Dharma. Now, if Lama, the question that I have for Lama today is about what is known in Chike as the Pinso Ngaden. Pinso Tsopa Ngaden. So if Lama can share that with us, what is the...
Well, the analogy that we used about the vessel is popular, it's simple to understand, and it's very important, it's crucial.
Yes.
And yes, we just talked about how not to, but then we just sort of said, hey, how about the reverse side so that it's okay?
Yes.
But also there are other factors where you just have to be, how respectful you have to be, how devoted you have to be, and the manner that you have to really sort of, pay attention. And oftentimes, I must confess that when you have a big crowd and the sun is scorching up there, and it goes on for days,
yes,
people do sort of, get a little off the track.
Yes.
But besides that, I think everything I should say is just absolutely fine, and people, the very fact that they're coming up is a plus point.
Yes.
And talking about the 5, auspicious environment, we should say, is that we call it Pinsum Tsokwangaden, which means like the 5 environments or the circumstances that we need to be in, which is, do, the place, which is ne, then time, do, then the teacher, the retinue, and then the teaching.
Yes.
So that's, sort of creating a favorable circumstances, I guess.
Yes.
So when you have, if you just need to talk, I think we can talk about, from the primordial Buddha to all the way, and it takes ages actually.
Yes.
And that's what happens when you normally do a long mandala offering.
Yes.
But I think we would rather be better off if you just talk about the present scenario that's up in Kunsal Podang.
Yes.
And when you just talk about first about the place, we're talking about first. Let's talk about look at the world as in a larger context, and then think of Bhutan as a small country. How fortunate we are! How fortunate we are that the Buddha Dharma is still flourishing, yes. And of all, amongst that, Vajrayana is flourishing, and we have our teachers. We have our leaders, of all we have our kings and just sort of almost like the 2 practitioners of the Vajrayana Buddhism itself. So being in the country itself is fortunate, I think. Yes. That you can just countenance. Yes. And from that, we've been just if you just talk about Kunsal Podang, that's kind of a distant place, I should say. That's a distant place where, one of the this is I think it's Sherab something.
Yes.
I forget. Was there? He blessed the place, and then during that time he wrote the Golden Kangjur.
Yes.
The Tripitaka in gold.
Yes.
Which is in Shozong, and the coincidence is that after generations, the Kangjur Lung is taking place up there. Yes. And the fortunate thing is, this golden text that he wrote, or he commissioned to write, was lost in a fire accident, partially.
Yes.
And when it was rewritten by during the third and probably during the third king's time, I guess. Of course, there were mistakes or some missed out lines and all those things.
Yes.
And what we are doing up there, alongside of the oral transmission that His Holiness is giving, is that to correct yes. what's been missed out or what was sort of misspelled or even a missing line and all those things. Yes, just rectifying. And that in itself is a very amazing coincidence.
Yes.
I think it's coming back like 100%,
Yes.
And that, I think, to be able to sit in a place which was blessed by a saint of that time, in itself is the fortunate place, I think.
Yes.
Then now we're talking about place. Then the time.
Yes.
Time. When you talk about time, His Holiness started it in the time when the Buddha first gave the sermon. He first taught the sermon.
Yes.
That month, which is the 6th month, right?
Yes.
So, and it's auspicious by itself that anything could have taken place. But to be able to sort of recite, give the oral transmission of the teachings that the Buddha taught
yes.
in the same month where, when he first gave the sermon, is a very auspicious time. And then His Holiness also chose the 10th day of the month.
Yes.
Which coincides with the birth of Guru Rinpoche.
Yes.
And then we have the teacher.
Excuse me. Yes.
Yes. The third one is the teacher, where you just say, I was just thinking of talking about this, and then I just thought, hey, the teacher, yeah, we have a big Buddha, one of an amazing Buddha statue that's phenomenal actually yes. there. And then most of us just tend to think that when you go to a temple or see an image, sometimes it's like taken for granted that, oh, that's a beautiful curved statue, or it's a beautiful, tanka or whatever. But then I think it's very important for us to be thinking that hey, there's this man called Buddha, here, and because of this man, we can, sort of follow on the path and actually free ourselves from all the sufferings. So making himself or visualizing ourselves to be ever so present in front of the Buddha himself is sufficient at the time.
Yes.
But then what we're getting here is that we're getting Jekembo, the topmost Lama of the country, to recite the teachings of the Buddha himself in front of that statue of the Buddha. I don't think I can expect anything more than that.
Yes.
So that, not having to go into details about Jekembo and all, the qualities of Jekembo or the teacher,
Yes.
I think that sort of says everything about it. Yes. And then it's the retinue. The retinue, who we have up there, we have, let's say, we have first of all, from the Shungdasang, we have the three Lupins.
Yes.
We have Tsula Lupin, we have Leso Lupin, we have Yönten Lupin. We have three Lupin. And then we have the Tulkus from different monasteries. And then we have Lamnetins from around the country.
Yes.
Then we have the Odin Sangha, as we touched before. In every fully full ordained group, it's said that there's one bodhisattva, and we're talking about thousands up there.
Yes.
So we're talking about hundreds of bodhisattvas there. And among us, the lay practitioners, especially when we're talking about Vajrayana Buddhism, we don't know who is practicing.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be dressed up as in religious robes.
Yes.
So we have a fantastic or a sublime retinue.
Yes.
There. And then the teaching itself. Do I have to explain that? I mean,
Yes.
there's nothing better than you could be teaching any other teachings, but to be teaching in such a blessed place in front of an amazing Buddha statue by the Jekembo, the topmost Lama in the country, to the hosts of high category of religious figures in the country.
Yes.
The teachings of the Buddha, all of the three baskets, all sums up to be just wonderful, I guess.
Yes. It's the Pinsum Sokpa Ngaden in its full manifestation. Now, my follow up on this would be this Pinsum Sokpa Ngaden, this 5 auspicious conditions. It belongs to which school of thought? Is it like Lama's been sharing about Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana?
Well, if you just work on through that, I don't think anybody should own it single-handedly, because to be able to get that teaching, let's say, it has to be an appropriate place. It has to be. If you just have, let's talk about a war-torn zone.
Yes.
Maybe you're talking about Iraq at Saddam Hussein's time.
Yes. Or Syria.
Even if there was time where the teacher was there, even if the teachings are present, the environment isn't right. You wouldn't have the opportunity to do that.
Yes.
Then even if you have a teacher, but if you just missed out on all those things, that he or she doesn't have the opportunity to give the teachings, that doesn't work out either. And even if there's a teacher who can really teach and is well known and gives this profound teachings, without somebody there to receive, there's no reason that he should be wasting his time there, right?
Yes.
And then now we're talking about the teaching itself. If you have a good place, if you have a nice teacher, if you have hosts of retinue, but the teaching is missing, then there's nothing to go about.
Yes. Reason I ask is because there's the Mahayana, Hinayana, Vajrayana, and then this practice of the Pinsum Sokpa Ngaden. This is supposed to be like a pure perception practice, is it?
Yes. Talking from, if you're just taking it there, then we can talk about Vajrayana.
Yes.
So
yes.
In which case we can say that, hey, this is owned by the third category, which is the Vajrayana or the Tantra. Because when you talk about perception in Vajrayana, well, let's talk about Vinaya. In Vinaya, you're just talking about sort of keeping yourself safe, at a safe distance, so that you don't get attached to, you don't feel hatred,
Nice.
And when it comes to Mahayana or the middle path, you just work on compassion, or you just see the same person that you're attached to as your siblings or brothers or sisters, so that you don't really get attached to in a manner that you used to.
Yes.
But then when it comes to Tantra, all of us here, all beings, are considered as the pure, sublime beings like the Dakas and Dakinis. So these are the thought process. Although we're working for the same reason, but because according to, the teachings are categorized according to the intellectual power of an individual.
Yes, yes. Because Lama beautifully put the Pinsum Sokpa Ngaden in context for the viewers as well as for me by assimilating all of these qualities that His Holiness, the Dharma, the place, but in a situation where, for example, where Lama was sharing about, say, in Iraq or modern day Syria, where there is war and all of this happening, this is a practice, Pinsum Sokpa Ngaden, that be it even if the exterior outside world is war torn, that you can practice this Pinsum Sokpa Ngaden, you can have pure perception and think that it's out of my own karma that the world is hell in its manifestation, but in truth, the blessing of the Lama and the teaching and the place, it's always auspicious. Would it be right to think that?
In a place like Iraq, you mean?
In Iraq, Syria, be it anywhere. Pinsum Sokpa Ngaden.
Unfortunately, it depends. Let's not just put unfortunately first. Let's say that,
Yes.
it depends on who you are, I guess, if you want to talk about that.
Yes.
If you are a practitioner, if you have had that, you can create your own environment.
Yes.
But physically, for many, that's
Yes.
not just going to happen.
Yes.
The very fact that the Buddha's teaching doesn't exist
Yes.
in itself says that one of it's missing.
Yes.
The very fact that the genuine Lama is not there also says that you don't have it.
Yes.
So in other words, you just don't have the five auspicious circumstances physically.
Yes.
But if you want to talk about Tantra, you're just saying, you can just, you just talk about Tantra, but talking about Tantra is one thing. It's even phony actually at some point. But then
Walking.
what is important is walking or the realization of the meaning of the Tantra. And that's what matters.
Yes.
And how many of us can do is something that we really have to work.
And before I move to my next question, like the last time that Lama shared about the pot, the vessel, and also shared with us that you do not need to exclusively use it to a specific situation. Similarly, I'm sure with the Pinsum Sokpa Ngaden as well, that not just when you're going to receive the Kangjur in Kwinsol Podang this time around, but whenever you go to receive any teachings, this is something that the audience should be mindful about?
Yes, especially in Vajrayana. Now, if you just go deeper, we're just talking about Shingkham.
Yes.
And then the Buddha there, and then the retinues there, and then eventually we just sort of bring it down to the real ground of what we are right now, or what we're doing right now. But then, besides the teachings itself, it doesn't necessarily have to be for the Kangjur alone. It can be for any teachings, but especially for Tantra, right? But then, besides keeping the teachings away, I think we can apply it to our family, you know, how we can be live in a harmony. If all of these are present, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot more harmony within the family, and eventually, it can expand.
Yes. Now, talking about the topic in discussion today, Sutra. Again, before I get into Sutra, Lama, anything that you would like to share about the Vinaya? Because we are, for the audience, for the people who are just watching us right now, this is the Jangchubshing. I am joined here by Lama Ngodup Dorji, Shingkhar Lam. And this is the second in the three-part program that Jangchubshing has requested Lama to be a guest for, and the topic of discussion is a discourse on the ongoing Kangjur transmissions being transmitted by His Holiness the Jekempo. So the last time we spoke about Vinaya, Lama shared 13 volumes. 13 volumes, and this time the Ngathang Burma, is that right? The
Ngarthang Parma.
Ngarthang Burma. Ngarthang Burma has 103.
Well, it's supposed to be 103, but what we're reading here, I think it's about 99, but
Less. So Lama, the sutra, to start talking about the sutra, how many volumes of the sutra are there?
30 is, as I was saying, about 26 of the volumes talk about the commonalities that is between Hinayana and Mahayana, and then the 6 volumes are exclusively talking about Hinayana, and then the other 3, it's not 6 as such, I think 3, and then the other 3, Pelchen Yangdian, it's talking exclusively about Mahayana. But then what is important here is to know that each one is a stepping stone to get higher on. We're not trying to abandon, or each one is like the lower ones are worse than or the bad,
Yes.
than what we're engaging ourselves into. So we need all of this. It's just like, as I said, going to our office for the first day and then going back there after 5 years could be, you're going to the same office, you're doing the same work, but I'm sure that your experience is, amazingly high that you don't really have to, even before you realize that happens actually. And
Yes.
that I think is crucial.
Basically, the whole Dharma is for the realization of enlightenment. What role does the sutra play in the path of a disciple?
Let's say, I was just going to narrate a small story, right?
That
So
would
maybe
be wonderful.
that probably would come in play here.
Yes.
Let's say Buddha was in Rajgir at some point,
Yes.
and after the summer retreat, he went on a Lam's round. And on the way, he saw a woman, elderly lady, just running up to him, and pleading that, to please save the life of her sons. And apparently, her sons have committed a crime that was punishable by, death. So and then the elderly lady was pleading to the Buddha by saying that, please request the king to, pardon my children. And when the Buddha did that, when the Buddha went to the king and requested him to that, and the sons were pardoned, actually. The sons were pardoned. And after that, they all became, including mother, all 3 of them became ordained. They ordained themselves, and they became monastics, and then they practiced, and then they attend what we call arhat, right?
Yes.
Tachimi Gopang. So that too in a very short time. So at that point, one of the Buddha's attendant just asked Buddha, saying like, so how come that, this is happening, this circumstance has led to these 3 being sort of freeing themselves from the suffering easy and quick?
Yes.
And at that point, the Buddha said that, well, this is not the first time I'm helping them. I've been doing this to this family for aeons, so it's not like we're just seeing it one, but I think believing in the past life and the future, I think that's a lot going on. Yes. From what we don't see. And the Buddha said that, well, once when I was born as a prince, and the Buddha was one of the youngest of the 3 siblings of the prince, there was a lioness who had cubs, like 2 cubs, and then she couldn't feed herself, so she was almost starving to death.
Yes.
And the only option left for her was that she was going to, having to eat one of her own cub, own child. And when the younger prince, saw that, to save the life of that cub, he fed himself to the lioness.
Yes.
And saved the life of the cub. So when his brothers told this about this incident to their parents, the king and the queen, they went up to the place where this took place, and then all they found was a bag of bones, and from that they built a stupa to just remember that birth. And that's what we today know in Nepal as Tamul Lujin, where the body was offered to the Takmo, or the tigress, yes. Or the lioness for the matter, I think. Yes. Tamul, sorry, that was a tigress.
Yes.
So at the young prince who offered himself to the tigress at that point was the emanation, or the Buddha himself. So even during that time, when the mother, the tigress, was the lady who was panicking to save the life of her children, and the two cubs were were her two sons.
Yes.
And the Buddha was the young prince who sort of saved the mother as well as the cubs. So, what it says here, or what the story is trying to say is that, how compassionate you have to be, or what are the benefits of being generous. So Sutra talks a lot on this topic.
Is this, because another thing that from my little reading I remember is Kerabla, the Jataka tales.
Absolutely. This is one you can refer to as a Kerab, because
Yes.
when you talk about Kerab, it's about the numerous lives that Buddha had
Yes.
before we know him as the
Shakyamuni.
enlightened Shakyamuni.
Yes. And is Kerab a part of the Sutra, or is it something else separate?
No, actually, yes, it's very much part. It's very much part of it. And then we're going to have everything here, be it Jakarta, it's all in the three baskets. But when we're talking about Kangjur, we have to be aware that, yes, we're talking about all of the books that's been translated from India or China into Chökyi.
Yes.
But there could have been others, and there were others actually which are not translated into Chökyi. So we do have things that have been left out.
Yes. Any other sutra or a similar parable or a story that comes to mind?
Well, it's too vast, isn't it?
Plus, something
we'll
that is quite dear to, for example, the one that.
But this was always there, and it also struck to me because we always go to Nepal, and then suddenly we say, "Oh, Chaitanya Namsam Jaya Joge," no.
Less.
So we make sure that we go to Tamil region.
Yes.
And I think it's good to know that why we are going there. We just see the statues, and we just stupa, and then we see statues of the tigress and her cubs. But what else? What is behind that?
Yes.
So that I think is more important and more informative.
Yes. And without intruding into Lama's personal practice, if I may be so bold as to ask Lama if you have a particular another favorite sutra maybe that you refer to from time to time or that comes to mind, similar to what the Tagmolujin story.
It's not as such a Tagmolujin story as such, but then how about a famous, a very profound, logical, democratic quote that
Yes.
I always like to say is that we just say, gelong dagam shenam sekti darwe session do legbar tala ngai ka lamar jai guchir min. That's something that you from that onwards you can say what Buddha's teaching really is, or how you should take it.
Yes.
So Buddha never imposed anything on you. Should you be interested in, this is what I'm teaching you, and this is the path that I have traced. Are you interested? Just come on.
Yes.
And what it says here is that, be it monk or anybody else, do not take my teaching just because I taught, or just because you like me, or just because you respect me. On the contrary, you have to analyze it, and apparently it seems that the goldsmiths, they just have to really sort of purify, and apparently it says that they do some kind of 18 stages of purification before you get 999.99, I guess.
Yes.
So that's what Buddha is trying to say. Analyze my teachings as a goldsmith would do to get an extract of a pure gold. Analyze my teachings, and then if it stands logic and suits your taste, then only you should take it on. So this, I think, it's always been valid, but it's even more valid with time.
Yes. Lama, with regard to the Kangjur, are there any do's and don'ts? As in, the fact that it's a 3-month period, and if I cannot take out 3 months to go and receive these precious teachings, is it because we do hear that people come on weekends also, some come for a day, some come and spend a few hours. Mm-hmm. Is that something that is allowed or anything?
Absolutely. As we talked before, it's like getting the whole teaching is amazing. It's wonderful.
Nice.
And this teachings, because it's huge, because it's the volumes are many, not many lamas would be really interested or sort of excited about giving it, because it's quite a task.
Yes.
To be having to sit on the throne 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day, just going non-stop. It's not an easy task.
Yes.
So, but then for somebody who can be there for there throughout, it's wonderful.
Yes.
But even if you're there for an hour or a fraction of an hour, you just hear what we say is chinlap. You hear that particular section of the teaching. And I think we talked about this in the first show, where, said that a line probably will lead you to enlightenment, or sometimes a word. So it's entirely on, how you click sometimes. The teaching itself has the capability of giving you that. And we as a follower or a student have the responsibility of practicing on that, whatever short time that we have been up there, and take it as a path. And you don't really have to, I think it's quite impossible actually to sort of grasp or to read or to own everything, So a line, a chapter is going to be more than sufficient to get you there.
Yes. Because the reason I ask this is because Namto might be the biggest deterrent to our enlightenment, but Namto in a sense that we hear even as a kid that sometimes that I don't know where it came out from and whether it holds any water, but the fact that the one the chambe mashuajin the zoo machamba lok you will be born in your next life without one of your limbs or something like that. So that's just hearsay. That's just a rumor.
I think it's a good excuse to make you go there every day. I think, doesn't that?
Yes.
Because there are many such things that we see in the ancient times when sometimes reason didn't work, and when technology was not as advanced as we think right now, as we have right now.
Yes.
For example, we just say in the ancient days we just say, the famous demon. I think we talked about that. We're just talking about what is Karmachame talking here. He's talking about the pure land of Amitabha, Upame,
Yes.
beyond countless universe, and a little above in the northern or the western direction. And today, through scientific research and the satellites getting more sophisticated and reaching further out, they are indeed discovering more and more universe. And as I was informed by one of our scientist friends, he was saying that as of now they have sort of counted 5,000 universe, yes. And then they're saying that there could be billions or millions, or they don't know.
Yes.
So now we realize that there was this person called Karmachame who didn't even have a piece of glass in his hand, predicting all that takes like millions of dollars. Yes. To get there, so yes. Much ahead. These are the things, but we can't just take it literally. And even the environment issue, like, there's always saying, it'll get sick. And what are the environmentalists telling us today? If you cut a tree down, probably you lose your water.
Yes.
But those days, the best way to deal with or save that tree was to sort of insert fear, I guess, yes. Or guilt.
Yes. So it was kind of like a skillful means and looking at the audience who...
That's what I think.
Yes. So it holds no water. So I would like to request all our viewers, we've been sharing from the beginning, the Lama's been sharing about how this, the Kangjur oral transmissions that's taking place in Kunsal Podrang has all the Pinsum Tsokbanga din, and it would be a shame for us to not go up there and receive the blessings. I'm sure within the Buddhist literature there is mention of what are the benefits of receiving the Kangjur. If Lama can share something about that.
We did share in the first session, but I think it's important. So, as I said, be it the whole teaching, or doesn't have to be Kangjur, or any teaching for that matter, or any good work that you do, there's always benefit of some positive outcome from that.
Yes.
And here, Now, when you go to receive the Kangjur, the first thing is that, oh, Givi Kangjur Namilo, that in itself sort of gives rise to the devotion, the faith in you. And then the fact that you have that motivation and making the trip from any distance to go to that place in itself accumulates a lot of merit. And then being able to sit there and listen to the teaching accumulates a lot of merit. And not only, and when I say accumulate a lot of merit, when you accumulate merit, your defilements sort of gets more cleansed.
Yes.
More cleansed because you're not when you have faith, and when the teachings teach you about not to harm, not to steal, and all those things, you refrain from those. And in the process, your actions are more positive, producing more positive results.
Yes.
And as I said, at the end of the text, any small text, if you read it, just says that, oh, the benefit of reading this text is such that if you read, write, or commission to do that, or sort of keep it with you, or make offerings to it, or just take it around the village, the benefits are immeasurable. And as I said last time, it was like, we do it all the time by saying, like, if there's drought, then we just go to a temple and take one of those, be it Bum or Kangjur, the old ones, and then go around the valley, and then you get a shower of rain.
Yes.
Such powers. These are physical powers. And mental, when it comes to within, by being able to read those, as you produce, as you practice on it, you become a better person, if not anything.
Yes.
As you become better, then your actions, your results of your actions become more productive and more better. And when you follow the teachings, eventually you reach where Buddha has been.
Yes.
So I think eventually we are all going to be there at some point, because the seed is very much within us.
Now, with regard to the Kangjur, what we hear, and last time I myself, when I came up to request Lama to be a guest for the Jangchubshing, I saw these people, patrons who are making donations, and I've seen it since childhood as well. People make this offering of Kusu Tutegi Mendela. What is the Kusu Tutegi Mendela, if I may ask for the sake of our viewers as well also? What actually happens when somebody is making a Kusu Tutegi Mendela?
A teacher is the most important player when you go to receive an empowerment, Wang Lung or Ti.
Yes.
A teacher is a very important figure here. And then there's a saying where it said that when it comes to qualities or knowledge, a teacher is as good as the Buddhas of the past and the future. But when it comes to the gratitude that we should be paying them, he excels. The Buddha, we are living in a time when the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni is still present, but we have not been fortunate to see Buddha in person. But who we see as Buddha here, who is giving us the benefits of what the Buddha taught us, is a teacher. And he actually is a guide. He's a teacher who's a guide, who guides you on the path of the teachings that the Buddha gave some 2,500 years back, and then leads you away from samsara, or the sufferings. So now you want a person like that to do the same and be there for ages. So when you do Kusum Bhukti Mendel, literally what you're saying is that you're requesting that your teacher stay healthy and perform his sublime activities, for ages. So when you just offer the ku, you're just saying that may your body be healthy, may your speech be healthy, may your the mind be healthy, or may your activities flourish, may your qualities flourish. All of this with a fervent prayer, so that because here I think we can use Newton's third law probably.
Yes.
Every action having equal and opposite reaction, because of that coincidence, when a teacher who gives a teaching sits up, and then the students with fervent respect and devotion makes this offering, there's a chemistry that works. Right? And of course, there's this, the words of truth that's being said as you offer this, so that the teacher, if not anything, sort of the environment is lightened up. So I think it's very crucial.
Yes. And another thing that Lama shared in the previous episode was about the three conditions that need to be present to in the beginning, the motivation, and then the practice itself, and then the dedication. Can Lama elaborate on that, since nobody seems to be calling us?
That's good.
Yes.
Actually, yes, whatever we engage in, we don't even have to talk about the Dharma, it's quite a task when you have to engage yourself in practice of the Dharma. We can talk about ourselves, just one day's activity.
Yes.
Just wake up in the morning, then, if you're just grumpy, you're lousy, lazy and all those things, I don't think you achieve much during the day. You're more or less wasting, or even wasting others' time, and energy. But if you just wake up with fresh thought and then a willingness to do it,
Yes.
and wanting to do it without hindrance or obstructions, that sets the day. Likewise, to be able to practice on a sublime path, you have to give rise to motivation, because without that, you're not going to get anywhere near. That is very important. So you just get into that. You just sort of motivate yourself to get into that practice. And when you're there, now getting into that, after getting into that, if you don't have the diligence of being able to engage yourself, then, it's like just going to a land of gold and not bringing a piece back home.
Yes.
So eventually, when you have all these things, now on a daily basis, let's say that, money seems to be playing a bigger role in our lives. So we just say that, hey, today I'm going to make $1 million for the matter. Then you just engage yourself in doing that. Just because you think that you're going to make it, it's not going to fall onto you. So
Yes.
you have to find means. You have to have, sort of work on it so that you do earn $1 million.
Yes.
But what you do after you earn that? Blow it up, go to a party and just sort of blow it up in a minute or an hour. There are places where you can do that, right?
Yes.
So instead of doing that, now you might want to think about tomorrow or the day after, where you might not be able to perform as much, or your health doesn't permit you to do that. So you might want to deposit that and live on the interest that it provides, the bank provides. So likewise, once you have practiced, you have to you automatically change. The end product here you're giving is that you change to be a better person. Your negative obscurations or the defilements get lesser and lesser, and then you become a better human being. Meaning you also get along with your friends and families, and then you become a role model for them, which means you're spreading the message of peace and love, through example or living through that, rather than just by talking about it.
Lama even expanded on my question in a sense, because I was actually asking about a particular exercise, but Lama beautifully put it into a fact that we could start each of our days by waking up in the morning and taking cognizance in a sense and taking your life into control, that, okay, this is how I'm going to spend it, to motivate yourself. And then the day, how you spend your day till you come back to your pillow, it becomes your practice. And then just before you leave, put your head on your pillow and go back to sleep, or wherever you go, where your dreams take you, you dedicate what you have done in that day.
Yes, that's when I was talking about just sort of depositing whatever you have earned. And then when we talk about a day-long engagement,
Yes.
going back and putting your head on this pillow and going to sleep is not the end.
Yes.
Actually, it's very important to just sort of go to bed and just not sort of go dead right after.
Yes.
It's very good that you reflect on the day that you have lived.
Introspect.
Yes, you just think, what have I done? And then you just sort of don't let your ego play in it, because then I think you're not seeing 99% of the things that you have done.
Yes.
So if you just genuinely faithfully to yourself. Try to reflect on the day that you have spent. This is a time where you can just sort of rectify your actions of body, speech, and mind, and become better, go a step ahead. And if you go to sleep with a positive thought, sleep time, be it 7 or 8 hours or 4 or 3, whatever, because you start with one and then wake up at the other end, you have the whole stretch of hours where it's where you generate positive or negative thoughts or actions or It's like if you just make your computer work and then put a program on and just let it be without having your presence there, it still goes on.
Nice.
And if you just program it in a manner that you need to print 1,000 pages, or just say that just tear this all off, it can do it. And that's the same with a dream. With a sleep. So it's very important to go to sleep with a positive thought, so that you don't really have to work to it. You're sleeping there, yet gaining merit. And that is very important. And I think it's also a practice, and the good practice about that is that when you reflect on the day that you have lived, should you find anything that you need to rectify, then you sort of regret of the mistake or the wrong that you have done, and then want to make sure that it's not going to happen again. Yes. That way, I think that's a technique where you can better ourselves.
Yes. And now, because Lama's talking about confessing whatever.
Yes, you can confess, you can regret, yes. And
yes.
you can just sort of say that, hey, I'm not going to be that bad boy anymore,
Yes. And it's interesting because I kind of see this similarity in a sense, not exactly the same, but within Christianity, you need to go to that, to a church, into a confession room, and you confess. And in Buddhism, you have your own mind to confess to. And from the little reading that I did on the Vajrasattva practice, I believe there is something called the strength of the 4 tob, or is it 5?
Yes, there's a whole practice about Vajrayana, but then I think going in front of a screen.
Lama, I'll just have to interrupt Lama right now. We've got a caller, our first caller of season 2, Dorji from Yangtze.
I wanted to ask, I'm living very far from the capital city where the Kangjur Jalung is taking place.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, and I'm a civil servant, so I wanted to know, I cannot make my presence there at the place, so how can I accumulate merit, without making my presence there at the place, the very place at Buddha Point.
Yes.
Of course, I can imagine myself, being there and getting the blessing from the Chapje, but are there any alternatives where I can accumulate merits?
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Dorji, for calling us from all the way from Yangtze. Was the question clear?
Not very, actually. I missed on. I didn't hear the whole thing.
Yes.
Can you please repeat?
Mr. Dorji was asking because he's in Yangtze, he's a civil servant, and he cannot physically be present here in Kunsal Podang. So is there, and he's saying he can actually visualize and imagine himself being here. But other than that, are there any alternatives for him so that he can accumulate merit of the ongoing Kangjur transmission that's happening here?
Thank you, Dorji. Yeah, actually, what you're doing from that distance probably is enough for now, because other than that, there's nothing much we can do. But then, as we're talking about, and I'm sure you're aware of, the teachings of Buddha, be it a word or 103 volumes, all teaches us to sort of change from within. And when you have that motivation, be it from Yangtze or from the end of the world, you are trying to sort of generate more compassion. When you motivate something, it's for the cause of yourself as well as for the cause at a larger cause, and that itself generates a lot of positive energy. And I think, given the drawbacks that you have, you're set on the path, and I think that's good.
Lama was about to start talking about the Topjila, is it?
Here, I want to just make clear by saying that you're talking about confessing in a church and then about the Vajrasattva and all those things. I see a lot of difference there. That's something that I want to make clear.
Yes.
Because just go say, like, suppose that I'm confessing in front of you
Yes.
with a screen in between us, and you're saying that I've done this, and then you are a human being who says, okay, you're forgiven.
Yes.
Then I go back and do the same thing and come back to you and say
That's
that I
the
did it
same.
again.
Yes. Yes.
That's when Nyambutopshi plays in.
Yes.
You have to sort of, to be able to really sort of get rid of the negative actions that you have committed, to cleanse yourself of that, you have to really sort of recognize it, that you have done something wrong.
Yes.
And then
Yourself,
you have,
more
yes,
than another bystander or a witness to that.
that doesn't help, because you are the person who can only sort of correct yourself. You can create an environment, but you are the person.
Yes. Lama, I mean, it's never enough time to discuss the Buddhist truths. But in closing, anything briefly that Lama would like to share?
As we started, there's this very important event that's going on up in Kunsal Podang. And as I said, it's not an easy task for any Lama to be sitting there, so for hours, for days, weeks, and months. So you do need to have that special quality or the motivation to be able to do that. And when that's being done, I think we should take the opportunity to be there, be it for an hour or a day, or good that if you can make it all through. So these are rare opportunities. This doesn't happen even on an annual basis or even in a decade sometimes. So when the circumstances are favorable, why not take an opportunity and just just listen to it, and more than listening, practice that.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Lama, for taking time for us and accepting my request this second time around. And for everybody who's at home watching this show, this was the Jangchubshing. I am Karma Dendrup. And for your information, we will be 2 weeks from now, we will be doing the final segment of this a discourse on the ongoing Kangjur transmission. And I hope Lama will join us again. And we have a Facebook page, we have an email account, we are on YouTube. This show as well will be uploaded on YouTube, and this will rebroadcast in the coming week. Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget our Jangchubshing slogan, which is, like Lama shared with us, his favorite line from the Buddha Dharma, which to sum it up all was to analyze. So our show's slogan is as well as analyze and realize. Thank you for watching. Good night.